Well, welcome everyone to Veganic Gardeners Question Time. Do you know, as that video really illustrates now, more than ever, it's so vital that we engage in how our food is grown. And by growing your food veganically, you are part of the growing revolution, which can not only transform your garden plot as it has mine, but also make a change in the world and contribute to how the world is healing. Well, I'm Giles from the World Healing Project, and it is my honour to be hosting Veganic Gardeners Question Time once again. Now, have you ever wanted to know how to grow your food organically using only plant-based fertilizers? There's so many benefits for doing it. Well, we are here to answer all of your questions, and we have been sent in questions actually from all around the world. Fascinating questions, and we're looking forward to getting into it. Now, all of the shows are recorded on our YouTube channel, so do give that a like and a subscribe. And your comments, if you're watching live, we might actually be able to get them sent in. Well, before I introduce the panel to you, and we have got some top international veganic experts today, we really do. I'd like to tell you about the Vegan Organic Network's world map of veganic gardens. This is such an exciting project that Dan has spearheaded, the maestro. Now, there it is currently, the map of veganic gardeners. And we have got people building up from all over the world. There you can go. Oh, there's one down in South Africa there. We're going to New Zealand and Australia. And this is a fantastic thing. You can check out veganorganic.net and go through the website there, or I believe the website link, direct website link, is vonmap.uk. Look at that. I mean, we're well represented in the UK, as you might expect. Look at all these. Oh, there we go. Look, the World Healing Project. Oh, here we go. That looks familiar. That's my garden there. Picking the old dandelions, one of the things we grow best in our garden there. And it's a fantastic way to connect with other veganic gardeners, even if you just have a little window box or you might have a field. It doesn't matter. You can get on the map, and it's a way to really network and connect. It's free to join, and you can join the map today, however big or small your plot is. And so many people, more people are actually growing veganically than possibly realize. So there we go, vonmap.uk. Absolutely fantastic. Well, look forward to getting into that map a bit more as it expands. So shall we introduce the panel? I think we've got some fantastic people today. Well, first off, I'd like to introduce Anton Rosenfeld, the research officer at Garden Organic. Anton, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it's getting quite chilly here in the UK, but still bearing up.
Yeah, you do look very well. It's interesting when I get to meet people via Zoom in the flesh, so to speak, rather than just seeing their profile pictures. And one thing I've noticed, Anton, is that the old beards are starting to grow on some of the panelists and some of the experts, which is, I suppose, to keep us warm. Now, you've got a great passion for growing and for research, running training courses, writing. Passionate vegan for over 30 years. Anton, tell us what you've been up to recently.
Well, we've been doing quite a range of things. One of the things we've been doing is working on a Natural Environment Research Council project, and we've been working with multicultural communities and characterizing some of the crops that they grow and looking at the culture behind those. So that's been a really interesting project. So that's kept me quite busy recently.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we look forward to hearing your wisdom later. That's Anton, the research officer at Garden Organic, who's worked for 18 years. Well done, Anton. Well, let's bring up our next panelist, shall we? She is joining us. Maureen, are you there? Here she is, lovely Maureen.
I'm here.
Hello, darling. A medical herbalist, 25 years experience working with herbs. And we just were catching up before we went live there, Maureen, about your fantastic journey. And just tell the listeners where you're beaming in from today.
I'm in southwest Portugal. I'm near the town of Sagres, which is the most furthest southwestern point of mainland Europe. And
Wow.
it's very dry down here. We didn't have any rain from April. The first rain started properly in the middle of October, and we're due a downpour tomorrow, which we're all jumping and shouting about, because during the summer here is like the winter for the plants, because they have to hunker down and protect themselves against the dry and the concentrated dry and heat of the summer. And now, once we've had the first rains, everything starts to green again. And so we're in a completely different mode of being. And I'm already starting to grow some things that I had to wait all summer for, like fava beans, garlic. So this is the beginning of the growing season for us.
Wow. And I'm sure a little bit different than when you are north of the border, so to speak, in Bonnie, Scotland, on the Isle of
Yes.
Arran. I have very fond memories of visiting, watching the Golden Eagles some years ago. What a place! But it just shows you, doesn't it, with the knowledge we can grow veganically, be us in an arid environment or somewhere it probably rains a lot.
Well, it actually was easier to grow in Scotland in terms of veganic qualities, because we had so much seaweed available. We would go down to the beach regularly and just load up trailerfuls of seaweed and put them all over the beds at this time of year. And then that would rot. We would get like a foot deep of seaweed on our beds, and that would rot down during the year. And it would just about have finished rotting at the time that everything was warming up again in April, and when you wanted to plant again.
Wow.
But down here in
Beautiful.
Portugal, it's completely the opposite.
Yeah. Well, we
So,
look forward to getting into your wisdom through these questions, Maureen. It's
yeah.
time. Thank you very much. It's time to bring up our last panelist, last but not least. Lovely man, bringing the wisdom from Canada, frozen Canada. Stefan, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm great. Thank you.
It's lovely to see you. I so enjoyed the wonderful Learn Veganic course that I took part on last year with beautiful Megan. And you co-founded the Veganic Agriculture Network in 2008. You've been gardening veganically for 20 years. I look at the pictures of the produce in the Von magazine you're growing. Come on, Stefan, how you doing?
I'm really fine. I mean, it's great. Yeah, it's here. It's really different from Maureen, which is a dry season. Now here it's the winter. You have already snow on the ground, so the gardening season is finished. But I'm really excited because a few weeks ago we organized the World Vegan First Veganic Summit, and it was a real success with more than 1,300 people coming up. So I think it's really amazing to see that everywhere in the world people are getting interested in veganics, and I'm thrilled. And we are already preparing and thinking about the next Veganic Summit next year.
You're well done,
preparing the next session of our Learn Veganic class that will start in January next year.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk a bit more about that later on. That's wonderful, fantastic work you're doing, and I'd also just like to thank. He's behind the scenes tonight, as he always is, working so hard. That's Dan Graham from the Vegan Organic Network, because it's when I read the Growing Green magazine, or when we have networks like this, or with your own Learn Veganic thing, or with the summit, there are so many people, growing numbers of people massively, going veganic, healing the planet, and it's such a wonderful movement to be part of. Well, I tell you what, Stefan, we've got a few tricky questions today, my friends. So shall we get into the questions sent around? Here we go, panelists. Get ready. So you know the form. I'll ask the question, and then whoever wants to go first, you just raise your hand. Well, here we go, Maestro, please. Question 1, if you don't mind. And yes, here we go, Maestro. Question 1. There we go. Our friends Brian and Kim. Well, any suggestions for minimal dig potato planting? Brian and Kim, they tried covering with semi-rotted wood chip this year, but they had much lower yield than if they would have dug it in. Good question. I mean, to be honest, I know what I did, but let's go to you first, panelists. Who can help Brian and Kim? Anyone want to go? Okay, Stefan, in first.
I've been experimenting with minimal tillage in my gardens. It's true that I would have been curious to know what was the technique that the person was using before, because it's true that when we just do no dig and we cover, sometimes it might the yield might be less because the soil, if it's a bit compacted or if there is not enough nutrients, it won't produce as much as if we will till the soil and bring a fertilizer in there. So what I would say, especially with the semi-rotted chipped branch wood, it's not that nutritious. So maybe if you want to try again, I would put some compost on the soil before putting mulch over it, so that there is enough nutrients for the potatoes to grow. And if not enough compost, maybe I would add some alfalfa pellets or something that will bring some nutrients, so that the potatoes will have nutrients to produce a lot. And it's true that when we compare no dig with digging techniques, if we dig the soil, it's true that we bring a lot of oxygen, and we uncompact the soil, so it brings a lot of nutrients available readily for the roots, because all the oxygen will activate the bacteria and it will digest the organic material in the soil, and this brings a lot of nutrients for the potato that are growing. So if we don't do that, we have to have enough nutrients next to the soil, so that it will decompose and it will nourish the potatoes that are growing. So I think I would suggest to bring some more fertilizers before putting the mulch, so that we have more yields.
It's going to make more potatoes, isn't it? Let's. It's not rocket science there, Brian and Kim. Now, thank you, Stefan. Any other panelists just want to jump in here? Okay, Anton, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, I was just going to say I've had similar experience with doing sort of no dig potatoes at home. I found in the sort of first year my yields weren't so great, but I've just kept on piling on sort of nutritious things like the compost. I also used alfalfa pellets, grew some green manures. And after a couple of years, I'm really getting good yields now. So it does take a bit of time for the system to readjust. I also think probably the semi-rotting wood chips, they can actually take some of the nitrogen out of the soil as they break down as well. So that might explain the lower yields that you had. But don't give up. I think, once you get your system in balance, it will work well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Maureen, anything to add, or shall we move on? We'll move on. Okay,
well, from my Celtic homeland from my Celtic homeland of Scotland and Ireland, they used to have the run rig system, which was where they would create a raised bed by digging a furrow and putting the soil from that the hollow you're creating onto the side, so that you had lines of raised bed ditch, sort of small ditch path, raised bed path, and they would plant the potatoes in the raised bed. So you could have your potatoes, your seed potatoes on the ground level, and then you're covering them when you're digging the ditch next to them. And that was how they used to do it in the Gaelic culture. Of course, now we know about the bacteria feeding nodules on the roots of the legume family. So you could for sure be growing fava beans, the broad beans, the alfalfa, as both Anton and Stefan have mentioned, red clover. Any of these you could sow on the surface once you've done your run rig, your raised bed, and they can quite easily grow together, so that you've got the nitrogen fixing bacteria in direct contact, fertilizing the area that your potatoes are in. That's how our ancestors used to do it, and I don't see why it can't continue to work.
Fantastic advice there. I just want to very quickly add, I use copper tools in my veganic garden here in Suffolk, because one of the things that I've studied is the work of Victor Schauberger and the subtle energy field in the soil which dissipates when you use iron tools. And I find using the copper is so soft and beautiful. So my potatoes, I just did with my old mattock there, copper mattock. I just did a little trench and I filled it up with goodies. My God, they were giants. They were like bowling balls. So there's a bit of advice for you. Maestro, question 2, please. Here we go. Wood chip. Alia. She's just had a load of free wood chip delivered. Now, that's always, the tree surgeons often want to get rid of it sometimes. It's mostly conifer, leylandi. What a surprise there. You get what you get, and you've waited a long time for it. What are you going to do with it? Well, to use it for a snaking pathway through the lawn. Is this a good idea? Is it's quite soft? And would you use the surplus on any flower beds? Any concerns about acidity? Okay, panel. Maureen's dropped out. She's in Portugal. She might be back. Panel, what about this leylandi chip? Anyone?
Shall I go first?
Anton, what could Alia do with it?
I think it'll be fine for using in the pathways. With the flower beds, it would be okay as using as a mulch on the surface, because that'll help maintain the moisture, but I probably wouldn't dig it in, because again, as it starts to break down, it might rob the nitrogen from the soil. From an acidity point of view, I know that's been a sort of traditional thing that coniferous wood chip is acidic, but actually as it starts to break down and decompose, it isn't really that acidic. It does neutralize during the composting process. So as a mulch, I think it would be fine on the flower beds, but I probably wouldn't try and dig it in.
Yep, good answer. Stefan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, it's similar. I would prioritize to use that in the coniferous shredded wood in the path. For the flower bed, maybe a bit, but mostly I would say for perennial flowers and on the ground only. But if I have a lot, I would leave part of it, of this this shredded wood, in a pile and let it compost and rot for 1 or 2 years, and then it will probably produce some good organic material that we can use after in the garden. But it's true that mixing it in the soil will probably have a detrimental effect on the soil, just for maybe for taking the nitrogen, or maybe with acidity at first. And so I would try to use it path on as a mulch on perennial flowers, and leave it a part of it in a pile for composting.
Wonderful advice. I think it was a few years ago, my dad said, the neighbour's getting some trees chipped up, so I'm going to get it for my raspberries, he said. Well, anyway, he went round there, and it was, what a terrible thing. It was all just leaf, conifer leaf, really. He chucked it on his raspberries, and he had the worst yield that year. It was just terrible. It was stupid, but he had it for free. Oh, it's free. And it, fortunately, a few years later, I think the soil rebalanced. Maureen, anything you'd like to add there? Snaking Path?
Not really. No, I think I agree with Anton totally.
Yeah, we'll move on. We've got so many questions, and I tell you what, it's a wonderful thing. Thank you, everyone, for sending them in. Hi, panel. Angus here. This year I was successful at growing some lovely sweet potatoes in large pots in my greenhouse. Well done. I brought the slips for these at the end of April from eBay. Can the team advise how to produce my own slips from a few tubers I've saved so I can grow more next year without having to purchase any more slips? I mean, save your seed and all that. well out of my knowledge base sweet potatoes panel. Over to you. Who's growing sweet potatoes?
I can
Maureen.
actually comment on this because my
Maureen,
partner worked on I'm in sweet potato land. My partner used to work on a sweet potato farm, and what they did was you need to let the tubers start to sprout and produce more stems, and then the main, whichever is the biggest, the primary stem, you can then start to take cuttings of maybe 25 centimeters from the growing tip back to the main shoot. The only thing is that if you're taking a middle section, you have to remember which end is at the growing end and make sure you plant it, you transplant it into either a pot or directly into the soil, with the right end going down into the soil. Sweet potatoes like very sandy, loamy soil. They don't like heavy clay, thick soil. They almost grow in sand. So I would suggest that would be something that you could think about, mixing up your substrate. But you need to let your seed potatoes sprout significantly first before you can take the cuttings or the slips from them. And if it's a really long strip, if you let the main stem grow quite well before you start taking cuttings, you can get maybe 3 or 4 slips from a main stem that's coming off.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's very insightful. Stefan, would you like to add something?
Yeah, there are different methods also to accelerate the production of the stems and the sprouts. The 2 main methods are to soak part of the tuber in water. So we can sometimes use toothpicks and just dip the part of the tuber in water, so it will encourage the sweet potato to produce the shoots. Or we can also just take sweet potato, put it in a tray with some potting mix, and then leave it to start making shoots. Most of the sweet potato will make these would sprout at room temperature, so it's quite easy to. I find it's quite easy to just start shoots of sweet potatoes, and once they get about, I would say 20-30 centimeter, we can take some and put them in water, and they will resprout, and we can multiply the slips this way. I know that for commercial growers, sometimes they will just take a lot of little sweet potato and put them all in a tray with potting mix, and they will make a lot of shoots this way. I like the approach of using water and just to dip part of the sweet potato in water, because we can see if there are some parts that are getting rotted, or we can follow the growth of the roots and the slips. So, but I think I would advise the person just to try, and it's really rewarding to see our sweet potato growing stems and to use them to plant outside. That's I would advise to experiment with that.
Wonderful, thank you. We just had a question come in from a live listener. What's the best time to start a slip? And this listener was in zone 8. Anyone got any? When's a good time? Any time?
Well, it's springtime here in Portugal. I'm not quite sure exactly what zone that would equate to, but we would do it in April time, March, April time here in Portugal. I presume
in Quebec. In Quebec, it will be more in January, February that we can start to let the plant grow and make shoots. But it's sure that we can start, depending, I don't know what zone 8 is, but once we start them, we can just make cuttings, and we can multiply the plants. If it is overgrown, we can just multiply the shoots.
Oh, we just Shilpa, she's in the Netherlands. So probably a similar climate to to me here in the south of England. So springtime.
I guess it depends on. I guess it depends on when your tuber is starting to make its sprouts,
Of course.
and then the stems are once the stems have elongated sufficiently, you can
Well,
start
I hope that's
taking your
useful
cuttings.
for you, Shilpa. Anton, do you want to add anything about sweet potatoes?
Yeah, I mean, I've just dabbled with it on a small scale, really, and I find the tricky thing is really controlling when they sprout. Sometimes they sprout quite a little bit too early, and you're left with these sort of tubers in the middle of winter with big sprouts on them. So perhaps try and keep the tubers slightly on the cool side, just to keep them under control until you need to take the sprout.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I think that was fantastic, and thank you so much as well to our listener for sending those messages in. And the technology that we have here, isn't it wonderful that we can react live to our yes, Shilpa, you're wonderful. Thank you. We really do appreciate you and everyone who tunes in live or afterwards to this fantastic show, which is 3 years now, every single month, thanks to Dan's wonderful vision, quite frankly, to be able to do this. It's fantastic. Imagine we all had to get together in person to do it. In a local village hall, imagine the bill for your flights there. Anyway, let's move on. I tell you what, I live in Suffolk, sunny Suffolk. It's always sunny here, nearly always anyway. Beautiful. And the leaves. Oh, the leaves. I think we're going to have a little theatrical interlude here, are we? This is a poem by Elsie N. Brady entitled Leaves. How silently they tumble down and come to rest upon the ground, to lay a carpet rich and rare beneath the trees without a care, content to sleep, their work well done, colours gleaming in the sun. At other times they wildly fly until they nearly reach the sky, twisting, turning through the air, till all the trees stand stark and bare, exhausted, drop to earth below, to wait like children for the snow. Well, thank you there who have sent in that poem, and I'd encourage everyone to get out and just embrace that beauty and breathe it in. Okay, maestro. Oh, you wouldn't believe in a question about leads. It's Tony, regular contributor. Tony, how are you? Leaves everywhere. What to do with them? Ooh, who likes leaves? Panel, over to you. Who's got to go? I think we're all going to answer this one. Anyone wants to go first? Don't all go at once.
Okay, I can
Okay,
go.
Stefan. There we go.
Okay.
Leaves.
But there's just so much. It's a great resource. So there is so much thing we can do with leaves. First, I would say if we have a lot of leaves, doing leaf mold is a really great way to pack a lot of leaves in a bin or in a pile and just leave it there for 1 or 2 years, and then we have this semi-rotted leaves decompose, and it smells good, and we can use it in the garden, and it's really good. Leaf mold is one of the first thing I would say. Then it's sure that in the garden we can use it as a mulch. We can also shred the leaves if we want it to decompose faster. We can put a lot of leaves in the pathway just to keep weeds away. I have always a few bags of leaves to put in my home composter. So this is a good brown material that we can use. Often leaves, we can also just mow. If we have leaves on the lawn, we can just mow them if there's not too much, and it will just decompose and it will enrich the soil. So mowing the leaves on site is a good way to deal with some leaves too. And as a friend was telling me, why not just leave a lot of leaves where they are next to the trees, so it will just create habitats for the wildlife. And we know how important it is to create habitats for the wildlife. So just leaving some on site where it is, I think it's another way to just deal with the leaves in a sustainable way too.
Wonderful. Okay. Anton, what are you doing with your leaves at Garden Organic? I'd like to know.
Okay, well, Garden Organic, we follow Stefan's example. We try and leave quite a lot around for the wild habitats, but then stuff that in places where we don't want it, we make it into leaf mold. And certainly in my own garden, next door neighbour's got 2 massive trees where the leaves the trees dump leaves all over my garden. So I have a great source of leaf mold there. I do feel very sorry for all my neighbours who go around sort of collecting them all up, and then they give it to the local council to take away, and then they probably buy it back again as soil improver in a few years' time. So it's
I actually think, Anton, that's a form of mental illness when people do that.
Well, they don't know any better, I suppose. But
you're being very kind, and I'm probably not. But I see people do that myself. They put it all in their green bin that takes all the energy to pick it up, and then, oh dear me, compost. Come on, let's just make compost and piles of it. I suppose you've got to have the garden with the size. And that's the problem, isn't it? And some people think if they have a pile, maybe they'll get rats. Maureen, leaves. Do you like leaves? You'd love leaves. You're a herbalist.
I think we have to pay attention to what nature is doing, and nature is composting naturally in autumn. So that's the time for us to do the same thing, because there's not a lot, unless you're here in Portugal with me, there's not a lot of growth going on in the winter. So that's the perfect time to let your leaves fall onto your beds and create the natural mulch and the natural composting directly on the beds. And like I was saying about the seaweed, if this is the time of year to be getting, well, from late October actually, it's the time of year to be getting your mulch on your beds to protect them from the winter storms and rains and wind. And they'll just keep rotting down all winter, and then everything's ready for you in the spring when you're ready to plant out. So just follow nature's lead, basically, and use your leaves.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love the words of Victor Schauberger. He said, observe and imitate nature. So that's what we should do. That's the veganic way. I mean, it's just sensible, isn't it, really? Okay, Maestro, I think we've got another one here. Now, this is quite a profound question, Evie. Thank you. Is it okay for people with guinea pigs to use the waste straw and their poop in their plot and still be veganic? Well, a bit of guidance here. Do we have Maestro on our thoughts? Okay, what we say to home growers, animal sanctuaries, non-certified plots that have rescued animals and animal companions, use the manure from these animals on a separate part of your garden plot and make a clear distinction which is veganic and which is not. When you follow this criteria, you can then join the Von World Map of Veganic Gardeners. I mean, I think that's very sensible advice. Panel, interested to have your thoughts. Maybe we can help out Evie and others who might have animal companions. Oh, can you suggest places where people could possibly use the manure from rescued animals or animal companions? I mean, a fruit tree, I suppose, is kind of better than your lettuce. It just comes through in the taste, isn't it? Anyone?
Yeah, but it's true that by definition, veganic is we don't use animal inputs. So it's true that to be certified veganic or to be on the veganic map, we should not use animal inputs in the plot. But if it happens that someone has these droppings and the waste from the animals, it's sure that it's better to use it somewhere. I would say maybe if you have composting it and using it on the lawn or for flower beds or things that we don't eat, and I think because there is also these sanctuary farms and all these people that have animals, I think in the ideal world, these droppings and these waste should be used to produce fodder or food for the animals. I think that would be the best cyclic pattern there. But otherwise, to just use the droppings on plants that are not for human consumptions. That's what I would say.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'll tell you what, panel, if it's all right, I want to move on to the next question because I'd just like to give this a bit of time because I thank you for answering that one, Stefan. This is a very profound one. Oh, here we go. Just a little plug here. Farmers can get stock-free organic certification by one of our certifying bodies, such as the Soil Association, Organic Farmers and Growers. For more information, visit stockfreeorganic.net. Now, that is almost the farmers branch of Ron there. So, Maestro, if we can have the next question, please. I saw this earlier and I thought, I hope it's the one that I was thinking of. Just imagine the world went vegan and only used veganic methods to grow food. What changes would you expect to see in the environment and society? So it'd be wonderful if we can all have maybe a couple of minutes on this one. Maureen, could I start with you, please?
Well, obviously we wouldn't have slurry lakes and these really toxic accumulations of intensive factory farmed animals waste that ends up being pretty toxic. So that would be eliminated for a start. I think we would have a much more respectful relationship with animals. You know, Rudolf Steiner, in his wisdom over a century ago, with the beginning of biodynamics, he had cows as part of the farming model, the biodynamic farm model, but it was a closed model. It wasn't somebody else's horse or cow. It was your cow, and everything was kept in the farm system, and that's what we've gone completely away from. That we don't have an integrated system where everything is nurturing everything else. And if intensive factory farming hadn't gone so far, we wouldn't have had to develop a veganic movement. You know, so it's in response to the extremes of what went before that why we're here. Yeah, and I think that if we did become veganic, then there might be a place for happy animals to be part of our whole system again, and to have it in a way that they are dealing with the fruit trees, that their produce goes to the fruit trees and to the vines or whatever is needing deeper nutrition, and that they can have a place alongside us again. You know, that in a sense the freedom of that can come about, that the animals are respected and cared for and have a role that keeps the whole thing going. I think that's the Garden of Eden, isn't it?
Yes, it
We're
is
all
the garden.
each other.
The Garden of Vegan, as they call it. Anton, over to you, my friend. What changes would come about? What would happen?
So one of the major changes, I think, is obviously we use a lot of our land for growing cereals to feed to animals, and instead we could be using that land for basically just regenerating the fertility. So we would be able to have a lot more sort of meadows. We'd have a lot more grass clover lays as well, and lots of more clover being grown, and that would result in a lot more insects being around, because part of the reason for our decline in insects is that we're not setting aside land for with sort of clover and sort of flower-rich meadows, and that has, since about the 1930s, that's one of the key reasons why we've had a decline in our sort of insects and bees. I mean, obviously there's other reasons as well as the pesticides, but so I think we'd see a change in our landscape. What we think of as a natural landscape at the moment, a lot of it's just sort of cereals being fed lots of artificial fertilizer. We could get away from that and have a lot more meadows and a lot more insects, and revival of the bees, really.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And Stefan, over to you. What would the world look like?
For sure, for the environment, it will be much better because we would free up a lot of land, so it will be a lot of room available to bring back wildlife and biodiversity. we will reduce a lot our emission of greenhouse gas, greenhouse gas emissions. So for the environment, it will be really good. And I think for the social aspects, I think it would change our relation to the animals, to nature. It will just change the way we eat, because if we have a veganic world, it means that we don't eat animal anymore. So we would have a different culture, a food culture. We will have a different interaction with the animals because we won't eat them anymore. And so I think it will be a revolution in food and in the farming sector. So I think that will be I think from my point of view, will be the best for the planet and for humans also.
Beautiful, beautiful, wonderful. Well, we did Von did an interview. I did an interview with Dr. Will Tuttle, who wrote the book The World Peace Diet. And I'd like to say, in answer to that question, that I think you can see my old T-shirt here. There we go. You see, when we put peace on our plates, and I'm just going to finish with a promo here, because our vegan musical collective has spent over 4 years working on an album called The Forest Garden. And I see forest gardens as a major solution for our world veganic forest gardens, where we can live in harmony. And Dr. Will Tuttle says, well, the veganic diet is the world peace diet. So that's my thought, that we could have a world filled with peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Maybe we can just visualize that for a moment. Maybe we can just hold that in our thoughts and our prayers. A world in peace, clean rivers, clean oceans, healthy soil, healthy food, abundance for everyone. We can feed the world. Yes, we can. Don't panic. It's veganic. Well, I am Giles Bryant. You've been listening to Veganic Gardeners Question Time. I'd like to thank my panelists, Maureen, Anton, and Stefan. You can find out more about their work. Just little plug, quick one, learnveganic.com, because the online course is fantastic. Maureen, you're beautiful. I look forward to coming. I'm going to get a boat and come and see you in Portugal. Anton, I'll come up to the Midlands, not too far from me, and learn about growing organic, growing veganic. I'd like to thank Dan, the maestro. I'd like to thank all the listeners, particularly a lovely person who's sending in the messages. And we'll see you again on Veganic Gardeners Question Time. Get those questions in, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget, join that veganic map. Please do support Von Vegan Organic Network, and we'll see you all soon. So take care. God bless you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.